Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us.
It's great to be back.
Yeah, glad to have you here. So today we're going to be looking at something.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty intense and might actually make you want to go out and buy a bunch of canned goods and like learn how to make a fire without matches.
Okay.
And that is the Olduvai Theory. Have you ever heard of this?
I have heard of this. Yeah.
So this is it's a theory. It paints a pretty like bleak picture of where human civilization might be headed. And it's definitely not like the utopia with flying cars and robot butlers or anything like that.
Right.
So the source material for this deep dive is a YouTube video, and this is pretty interesting.
Okay.
It's called La Aterradora Teoria Olduvai Ciencia.
Wow. Okay.
Which translates to the terrifying Olduvai theory science. And this is from a channel called...
Catchy.
I know, right? Cordura Artificial.
Okay.
And this video was actually uploaded back in 1996.
Wow.
But the theory itself comes from an academic, Richard Duncan.
Oh.
So it's like some random internet ramblings.
Right.
So to kick things off, maybe you can kind of help us understand what this whole Olduvai theory thing is all about. Like, what's the basic idea?
Well, basically imagine a world where everything we rely on today, electricity, global trade, even the internet, starts to crumble, and humanity is forced to go back to a way of life not seen since, well, the Stone Age.
Oh, wow.
That, in a nutshell, is the Olduvai theory. It argues that our current industrial civilization is on a collision course with collapse.
Wow.
A decline so steep it would send us back to a hunter-gatherer existence.
Okay, so that's
yeah,
definitely not something you want to hear first thing in the morning.
right.
But I mean, honestly, it's kind of hard to wrap my head around. Are we talking like a slow decline over centuries, or is this something that happens more abruptly?
Well, hold on to your hats, because the Olduvai theory predicts a pretty rapid descent.
Oh, no.
According to Duncan, things start to unravel around 2030, hit a critical mass by 2100, and by the year 5000, we're back to square one, living in a world largely devoid of the technology we take for granted today.
So that's not that far away.
No, it's not.
Like 2030 is like right around the corner.
It is.
And then to be like fully, in this hunter-gatherer situation by 5,000, I mean, that's wild.
And if that timeline sounds crazy, consider that the Bronze Age collapse.
Okay.
This is a historical example that is cited in the video.
Right.
Saw entire civilizations crumble within just a few decades.
Wow. Okay, so that's not that long ago, and it happened that fast.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective for sure.
Yeah, it really does. So, I mean, what's the driving force behind this predicted collapse? Is it zombies? Is it aliens? Is it climate change?
Well, those are all fun apocalyptic scenarios.
They are fun to think about.
The Olduvai theory points the finger at something a little closer to home, and that is our own energy consumption.
Yeah.
Specifically, the theory highlights the depletion of fossil fuels, especially oil, as the catalyst for this downward spiral. The video even uses the example of Bitcoin mining.
Oh, yeah.
Which, believe it or not, uses more electricity than some entire cities to illustrate how much energy we are burning through.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy and kind of scary. I mean, it's like even when we're doing something virtual like Bitcoin, it still has this huge real-world impact.
Exactly.
But okay, so how does a lack of oil lead to like the complete collapse of civilization? I mean, it seems like a bit of a leap, doesn't it?
Well, that's where the domino effect comes in.
Okay.
The theory argues that as energy resources dwindle, so does our ability to produce and transport goods, which leads to economic collapse.
Oh, wow.
Global trade networks, which rely heavily on cheap energy breakdown, causing widespread shortages and skyrocketing prices.
Oh, geez. So it's not just about like running out of gas for our cars.
Yeah.
It's like a whole system built on this like cheap energy just coming undone.
Exactly.
So then what happens? Do we all just start fighting over the last scraps of food and shelter?
Well, that is the bleak scenario that the theory paints. As things spiral out of control, governments would struggle to maintain order and eventually collapse, replaced by smaller, localized groups that can't support complex technologies.
Right.
The theory predicts a significant decline in population due to famine, disease, and sadly, conflict.
Okay, that's definitely a worst case scenario. I'm already feeling a little anxious just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But before we all head to the bunker, didn't the video also mention something about Malthus and his theories on population growth?
Yes.
Isn't this kind of a similar idea?
You're right. The video does touch on Thomas Malthus, the 18th century scholar who predicted that population growth would inevitably outstrip our ability to produce food, leading to widespread suffering.
Right.
The Olduvai theory shares some similarities with Malthusianism in that it highlights the limits of our resources and the potential consequences of exceeding those limits.
Yeah.
However, there's a key difference. Malthus didn't foresee the incredible advancements in technology and agriculture that allowed us to produce food on a scale unimaginable in his time.
Right.
So while the Olduvai theory borrows from that concept of limits, it really zeroes in on our dependence on energy as the Achilles heel of our civilization.
So it's not just about like how many mouths we need to feed,
right?
but how much energy it takes to keep the whole system running.
Exactly.
But if we're being honest, humans are pretty good at coming up with solutions, when our backs are against the wall.
Yeah.
Surely someone's working on a fix for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about renewable energy? Isn't that supposed to be the answer?
You've hit on a crucial point.
Okay.
The video does acknowledge the potential of renewables, but it also raises questions about whether they can truly replace fossil fuels on the scale and timeline required to avert a major crisis.
Yeah.
Remember, we've built our entire infrastructure around cheap, abundant energy, and transitioning to something entirely different is a monumental task.
Yeah, it's like trying to swap out the engine of a car while it's still speeding down the highway.
Exactly.
Not easy. But shifting gears a bit, the video also talked about something that happened right around the time it was uploaded.
Okay.
The arrest of the Unabomber.
Right.
What was the connection there?
Yes, Theodore Kaczynski.
Yeah.
While his methods were obviously extreme and reprehensible,
Right, of course.
his ideas do offer an interesting counterpoint to the blind faith in technological progress that many people hold.
Interesting.
Kaczynski, a brilliant mathematician, argued that technology was ultimately a destructive force that would lead to the enslavement or even extinction of humanity.
Wow.
His manifesto, published in major newspapers as part of his terrifying campaign, forced people to confront the potential downsides of unchecked technological advancement.
So are we saying that the Olduvai theory is basically a less violent version of the Unabomber's philosophy?
Not quite.
Okay.
The Olduvai theory is rooted in resource depletion and the specific vulnerabilities of our energy-intensive civilization, while Kaczynski's manifesto was more of a philosophical rejection of technology as a whole.
Right.
But they both share a skepticism towards the idea that technological progress is inherently good or that it will inevitably solve all our problems.
It's like that old saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
But this brings up another interesting point from the video.
Mm-hmm.
This tendency we have to romanticize the past.
Yeah.
We often look back at earlier eras like the Roman Empire or the Middle Ages with a sort of wistful nostalgia,
Yeah.
forgetting that people back then faced their own challenges and hardships.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
It is.
We strive for progress, but we also yearn for a simpler time.
Yeah.
The word retrograde, meaning simply backward, has become an insult in our modern lexicon,
Wow.
reflecting our aversion to anything that seems outdated or old-fashioned.
Interesting.
But history teaches us that progress isn't always linear, it's cyclical.
Right.
Civilizations rise and fall, and assuming that our current trajectory will continue upward forever is perhaps a bit naive.
Okay, so maybe flying cars and robot butlers aren't a guarantee, and maybe things could even get a lot worse before they get better.
Potentially.
But honestly, all this doom and gloom is starting to feel a bit overwhelming. If the Olduvai theory is even partially correct, are we just doomed? Is there anything we can actually do to prevent this kind of collapse?
That's the million-dollar question, and thankfully the video doesn't leave us completely in the dark.
Okay, good.
It emphasizes the importance of individual action and collective responsibility.
Okay.
We need to be more conscious consumers demanding sustainable practices from businesses and governments.
Right.
We need to invest in renewable energy and develop new technologies that reduce our reliance on fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And perhaps most importantly, we need to shift our mindset away from this insatiable hunger for more.
So it's not about going back to living in caves and giving up all technology.
Right.
But about using it more wisely, finding a balance between our needs and the limits of our planet.
Precisely.
The Olduvai theory, even if it turns out to be overly pessimistic, serves as a powerful wake-up call.
Absolutely.
It reminds us that our actions have consequences not just for ourselves, but for future generations. It really makes you think about what we're leaving behind for, future generations.
It does.
It's easy to just get caught up in the day-to-day
Yeah.
and not really think about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But this Olduvai theory really forces you to confront, those long-term consequences.
Absolutely. And while the theory itself might be debatable,
Right.
the underlying message is undeniable.
Yeah.
Our current way of life isn't sustainable in the long run,
Right.
whether it's resource depletion, climate change, or some other unforeseen crisis.
Yeah.
We can't just assume that things will always continue as they are.
Right.
We have to adapt, innovate, and be prepared to make some difficult choices.
It's like we're at a crossroads.
Yeah.
And the path we choose now is really going to determine the fate of, generations to come.
For sure.
It's a lot of pressure. But speaking of choices,
Right.
the video actually ended on a somewhat hopeful note, didn't it?
It did.
I talked about the importance of education and fostering a new generation of problem solvers.
Yes, that's right. The video's creator argues that knowledge is our greatest weapon. In the face of these challenges, we need to empower future generations with the critical thinking skills, scientific understanding, and creative ingenuity to find solutions to the problems we're facing.
I like that.
He even threw in a quote from the movie I, Robot
Oh.
about how young minds are often the ones who see the world with fresh eyes and come up with the most innovative solutions.
That's a great point. It's a reminder that even when faced with these, potentially dire predictions,
Yeah.
there's still hope. We're not just helpless bystanders.
Right.
We have the power to shape our own destiny.
Exactly. And it's not just about finding technological solutions, but also about changing our behavior,
Yeah.
adopting more sustainable practices, and fostering a sense of community and cooperation.
Right.
We need to move away from this individualistic, consumer-driven mindset
Yeah.
and embrace a more holistic, interconnected view of the world.
So the Olduvai Theory, rather than being a prophecy of doom, can actually be seen as a call to action.
Exactly.
A catalyst for positive change.
Yeah. Precisely, it challenges us to question our assumptions, reevaluate our priorities, and work together to create a future that's not just technologically advanced,
Right.
but also socially, just environmentally sustainable and ultimately more fulfilling for everyone.
It's a powerful message and one that
Yep.
I think we all need to hear.
Definitely.
So if you're listening to this and you're feeling a little overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the challenges we face, just remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together.
Right.
And by working together, sharing knowledge, and embracing that spirit of innovation,
Yeah.
we can create a future that's brighter than even the most optimistic futurist could imagine.
That's a great note to end on. The future is not predetermined. It's something we create through our choices and actions.
Well said. Thanks for joining us in this deep dive into the Olduvai Theory.
Yeah.
It's been a thought-provoking journey, and we hope it's sparked some ideas and inspired you to think differently about the future.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions.